Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Two World Podcast. I am Barney, and I have the sincere honor of getting us started today. And I am joined here today, as always, with my co-host, and he is
Jacob.
And today, as we think about Thanksgiving, which is less than 2 weeks away, I thought it might be fun to talk about gratitude, gifts, things that we have done for others, maybe, or others have done for us, that left us feeling with a real, sincere, genuine feeling of gratitude and thankfulness. One of the reasons that I came up with this topic was from a post that I wrote myself in, I guess, even back then you could call it a blog. It was on LiveJournal. Jacob, did you ever do LiveJournal?
No, please tell me about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So LiveJournal, I guess it's basically just a blog that, the people that you allow to read along, they can make comments and whatnot. And the topic that I posted, again, not too long before Thanksgiving, was asking people things that they were thankful for, but small things that they were thankful for. I think that it's probably a common tradition around a lot of houses around America and Canada and elsewhere around Thanksgiving to go around the table or just offer up things that you're thankful for. And the big things that we're thankful for, really, they are common and everyone likes to mention them because they really give us so much gratitude and so much joy and fulfillment in our lives, like kids and security and food and family and friends and things like that. But my post was thinking about really tiny things that maybe even the person who did them wasn't aware of. And this is not the only direction for our podcast today, but just to get started, I'll give you one of my smallest examples. I remember that when I was for a long time, but especially in high school, I had a lot of problem with dry skin just because I washed my hands a bunch. And I remember using this hand lotion, this common hand lotion, and it made my hands a little bit sore. And I just mentioned offhand to my friend, I said, this lotion, it's good, but it really makes my hands sore. I think I'm going to stop using it. And she said, no, don't do that. That means that it's working, but just your hands are really dry. And so they need time to heal and get better. And that was the one idea, that the one little piece of tiny information, this real gratitude, sincere thanks that I felt to my friend, because, she just mentioned it offhand advice, but had she not said that, I would have still been struggling maybe with these really dry hands. And I thought, wow, this one thing, it really made such a big difference in my life. And obviously, she didn't realize that little phrase, what a big impact it had for me. And when I wrote that post, then it received a lot of interesting comments, and then a lot of people reflected on that kind of teeny tiny bit of seemingly insignificant act that led to a lot of gratitude in my situation or other people's situations. But Jacob, when we were talking about today, you had a lot of really great and interesting ideas to expand upon this topic. And I'm curious about maybe what's one that you wanted to start off with today.
Yes. Well, I was thinking of the topic from a slightly different angle, but I think the result can be also quite powerful. So in your case, the surprise of somebody being thoughtful and helping you out when you weren't expecting it. And in my case, it was also about something unexpected, but it's slightly different circumstances. So let me pull up a slide here that I have to share with you. And it's interesting. When I was growing up, my parents were pretty frugal with a lot of their purchases. But when it came to certain things, they could be quite extravagant. And I remember it would surprise me when that would happen. because I was used to this general
Mm.
practice of frugality, uh, but particularly with musical instruments. Numerous times in my life, or for my sister, or anytime for my mom when she was getting a musical instrument, anytime it came to a musical instrument, they seemed to have this openness to really get something special. And I was learning to play guitar, and I remember going into the guitar store, and I had kind of gotten into electric guitars a bit, and I saw this green guitar that I really loved at um, Moore's Music Emporium in
Mm.
um, Bridgeport, Ohio. And I thought, oh, that looks amazing. And every time I would go in, I would look at it and be like, oh, I just love the color. And they would get it down and you could hold it and
Oh
play it.
yeah.
It's like it was a Stratocaster model, that particular type, similar to the Fender, with the layout of the pickups. And it just felt
Mm.
really good in the hands. And I loved its design. And I would tell my parents about it. And one time I went in and it wasn't there anymore.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh well, it was a dream that I
Mm.
had, but it's
Mm.
no longer there.
Mm.
And my parents were just very quiet and didn't say much. And then that year for my birthday, I went into our um, family room where we typically would open gifts, and they said, "Oh, we have a special gift for you in the closet." And so I went over and I opened the closet, and there was this green guitar that I thought
Ah,
was no longer a
yeah.
possibility, and I was so excited, and I quickly right away hugged them and thanked them, and started playing it, and then it became my favorite guitar, and I played it throughout um, the rest of my high school years and throughout college. And now I still have it. And every once in a
Oh
while, I'll get
wow.
it out, and
Oh
the
wow.
kids can play on it if they want. But anyway, um, in that particular case, I was just so grateful that my parents really paid attention, and it
Mm.
wasn't a necessary purchase. There were so many other
Mm.
things they could have spent their money on, but they chose to get this item that was special to me at the time, and it was an incredible surprise. It was one of those that really get you, that you don't see coming. So
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, but maybe I'll bounce back to you.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear that story,
Mm-hmm.
does it resonate with any experiences you've had with being surprised? I guess you could take it back if we want to bounce back to small examples. You can,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
however you want to take it.
Yeah. Yeah. First, I'm curious. Which which birthday was it that you got that one for?
I think it was 16.
Oh
Yes,
yeah.
my
Right.
16th birthday. Yes.
Yeah. My, my parents did something very similar for me. Also for my 16th birthday. They had kind of established a tradition of said of everyone would get like a nice stereo for their 16th
Oh,
birthday. Mm-hmm.
that's a good gift.
And yeah, and I being aware and being the youngest, I kind of was marking things down, taking notes here, and then I found a really nice one that I really liked the design and everything, and I kept leaving hints and whatnot, and then my parents, it was getting closer to my birthday, and then they gave the kind of typical speech where, well, things are a little bit tight this year, and we're just not sure. And then I thought, oh wow, of all the birthdays, of course. Also, on the day, then let's go to the living room, and then there it was, wrapped up for me, and it was really nice.
Oh, they played that one really well,
Oh
didn't
yeah,
they?
boy, because I didn't expect it at all. Yeah, they really, really threw me a curve, and that's what really got me off thinking. Oh yeah, oh I guess that's it. But it's so neat to hear how your parents really put so much value in music, and and then the creativity that you can develop through that, and the emotional release that music gives you. That's really really nice to hear that. Yeah, that also coming from a family that really can be frugal about things, that there are the when you see the things that they value and support in everyone, that they're willing to really take go the extra, put in a lot of extra effort to help develop those hobbies and interests and whatnot. Um, yeah, but
Definitely.
thinking about um, maybe another example of maybe unexpected uh, uh, someone doing something unexpected for me that really had a big impact. It probably comes from the when I was teaching at the university, um, because I was, you know, really fresh to teaching at the university. This was my first kind of job that wasn't teaching at a kindergarten, and even even during the job interview, which I found out wasn't typical, you know, the the people in charge didn't necessarily put so much emphasis on teaching, on the importance of teaching English, since it was medical school and whatnot. And so it made me feel even more doubt and hesitancy, um, when I was getting started, and I really was just getting started with, making lessons, a few days before, or a few finishing them a few hours before class, and then finding out that at our university, um, the students had the chance to evaluate every class, um, after during, they said make sure to set aside the last 10 minutes so that students can do the survey. And it was, a fairly extensive survey that talked about, serious things like, did it increase my motivation? Did I feel like this was useful for my career? Did I do this and this and this? And then they can rate it from very much so to not at all. I had no idea what to expect. But I remember seeing one comment that really caught me off guard. And it said, we really like Martin Sensei's smile. Um, and
Oh, that's
and
so sweet.
I know, because and it's one of those things. It's so nice for me on so many different levels, because of course, smiling is one thing that you just do, um, you know, naturally without thinking about it. You're not thinking, I've got to smile, I should smile, you know. And then the other part of it, the other aspect of it, much, much deeper, is ever since I was really little, I was always wondering, do I have a good smile? Should
Mm,
I show my
wow.
teeth when I smile? Is this a good smile? How to make it look natural? It was something that for some reason I'd kind of internally struggled with. And then to read the students say, we really like Martin Sensei's smile. It makes us feel
Oh,
comfortable and at ease in class. That was, whew, that really was really very affirming, and made me
oh,
think that I was really on the right track.
wow. I like that story a lot
Hmm.
because, yeah, sometimes some of the greatest gifts that we receive are affirmations of things we're questioning or uncertain about. Like, do I have a good smile? Yes, yes, you do. But it takes sometimes an experience like that for someone else to point it out to
Mm-hmm.
for you to feel comfortable and with it. Oh, that's really, I like that story a lot. Thanks for sharing that,
Mm-hmm.
Barney.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think as we're going through stories today, I may have some connectors with that.
Mm.
I think maybe the next one might be a little bit. Let me see here if I can um, go to the next one. Um, this is, oops. Excuse me. This is one that I found very affirming, and it came at a time that was I really needed it, and so I think it is something similar to what you're describing. So, just a little bit of background. When I was called to ministry at Worcester Mennonite, at that point in time, I had served in church ministry before. I had gone through a seminary and I had finished a doctoral program, but I hadn't been ordained yet. And so part of the next step then was walking through a series of things with our local conference. And I had a pastoral mentor and different parts um, of getting more training and learning more about my role that went into this ordination journey. And then at the end of that, there was a worship service where our congregation could formally celebrate me being uh, called and ordained in our denomination and our conference. And so that happened in 2014, and I started ministry in 2010. So that was a 4 year process. And it was so sweet. When the ordination service came, the congregation had secretly tapped people who were into sewing and quilt making, and they made this special quilt for me. Kathy Schmid worked on it. Um, Loretta Bauer worked on it. And when they gave it to me in the service, they said that each of the different patterns meant to uh, convey the idea that there are unique and different gifts within our church, and um, and also um, included in those are my gifts. And part of that time of presenting it to me was also a time to affirm the gifts that the congregation saw in me as a leader, as one who listens and cares about the people in the congregation, who has a heart to serve. And it just meant so much to hear that, because um, this came after my mom's death, not long after my mom's death. And that's an event that she would have been at 100%. And she was always a voice of support like that. And in her absence, to have the congregation give me this outward symbol of, of their appreciation, it just really, really touched my heart. And this quilt now hangs in my bedroom, and I get to see it every day. And it's just a beautiful reminder of that experience. So maybe a little bit of a connection with the
Yeah.
story that you shared, and hearing a word that you needed in a
Oh
time that
yeah.
you needed it.
Um, are you? So that's amazing to hear all of the thought that they put into the quilt. Are you? Is when I was looking at it, I was trying to imagine how it and the patterns match up with what they described that it symbolized. Is it possible? Is it easy? Do you think to unpack a little bit more about you know, the different pieces of the quilt that they said symbolized um,
Sure.
had symbolism with them?
Yes, yes. Um, so I think partly what it is the variety of colors
Mm,
and the placement of the colors. So in a often a maybe a more standardized quilt,
mm,
the pattern would be more uniform, and the even the color choices might be more standardized. But since the idea that they were going for was kind of like um, unity and diversity, or distinctiveness, but amidst a common interweaving, of talent and interest. You have a set pattern, and in a sense, it's kind of like a connection of different, almost they're kind of circular in a sense, parts, and the idea of like that that kind of dance of service, like from one to the other to the other to the other,
mm,
always deferring to the other, serving the other, and the mutuality inherent in that kind of reflects the mutuality that God designed, built into how He has gifted the church. He wants us to be a community that serve one another. And I mean, if you want to get really theological about it, it's deeply rooted in the nature of God, Father, Son, and Spirit, who are eternally serving one another and deferring to one
mm,
another and caring and loving one another. That itself could be embodied in the church. And so you have all of these different patterns on the quilt of this interplay of the different colored parts, relating to one another and serving one another. So it's kind of that's how I interpret it.
mm.
And there was a little bit of text that they gave me when the quote was presented, and some of those ideas were there too in that text as well. Just the idea of the diversity of the gifts, and what how they're represented in our church, but we're all interconnected. So, does that get at your question?
Oh yeah. And I'm wondering. I'm trying to remember back to right at the very beginning of COVID-19, when like we weren't able to meet in person, and we weren't sure how things were going, and people were making videos and whatnot um, to try and reach to people. You occasionally would come up with a reflection on like a psalm or some scripture, and
Yes.
would play music, Is this the quilt that you have in the
Yes,
background?
100%.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
intentional. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would film in front of that quilt because for me it symbolizes connection, and
Mm-hmm.
that was a time when we didn't have connection. So we needed to be
Mm-hmm.
reminded that, like in the past, we have been connected, and we, even though it's digital now, are still seeking to be connected even in a
Mm-hmm.
season when physically we couldn't be. And so it was kind of it was an encouragement to me to have it behind me when I would do
Oh
these
yeah.
messages, because it's like I remember this is what life has been for us, and it's kind of like a commitment or a promise that we want to keep seeking after that even in this time of the pandemic. And so yes, that's great that you observed that. Thank you.
Yeah. 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 That's great. Yeah. Um, it's just so nice that it serves so many different functions, especially through symbolism and the idea of the tradition, um, how quilts are traditionally, considered with the Mennonite and the Amish traditions, and then just, I mean, obviously they probably didn't imagine that you would use it in such a way, but the practicality of it too, the idea of creating warmth and maintaining warmth and kind of the sense of being wrapped up, you know, with
Mm,
by the care and love of the congregation too.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's rich. Thank you for sharing
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah, that's very
Mm-hmm.
true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, how about for you, Barney? Is there something that comes to mind as a as another connection for you as you hear those themes from my story?
Yeah. I guess it makes me think of like the long journey that you had, the 4 years that it took. It's not something that I was familiar with, that this could be such an extensive process. I'm sure that I mean, it makes sense when you explain it, that it really does that take that kind of time to be sure that this is what, is this really your calling, and then to have the mentorship to continue to grow as you're getting ready to um, lead lead a church, and um, I think that maybe it makes me think of one of the big things that we're thankful for, of family, and especially
Mm,
being parents, um, where you really have that lead up time where you're just thinking about, do we want to become parents? Is it what's right for us? Are we in the right spot right now? Um, is it, you know are we really sure about this? And then as you keep taking these steps, and then you find, even like then your own parents kind of, when they understand that you're getting ready, or that they will be grandparents in a way, then they kind of have this mentor role
mm,
for you too. And sometimes they may say that they want to just stay back a little bit, and let you learn it on your own, or sometimes they may want to be more involved. And that process of getting ready and not quite knowing what you need, what you're missing, what you don't need,
mm,
um, or maybe something that would be necessary in one culture. Like there were some things in the U.S. that if we were there, we would probably want to buy or prepare, but that they're not necessarily so necessary here
mm,
in Japan. And it that all of those people who are helping you and encouraging you and guiding you along the way in the process of getting ready to become parents, is something that's so meaningful.
mm.
And maybe they might feel, am I being overbearing, or am I giving too much advice, but all of it was just so welcome for us. And then of course when finally you get to be parents, um, and that journey is one that really is ongoing, and that I'm just beginning to enjoy. But what a whole gift, wonderful, amazing gift that this is, I think.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's true. I remember reading a reflection called The Person Sitting Next to You. I think it might have been by A.W. Tozer, but I'm not 100% sure. I have to go back and check. But basically, the idea was the person sitting next to you is such a complex mixture, almost even a mystery when you consider it of an inner weaving a network of relationships and experiences. You know, the that common phrase, it takes a village to raise a person. And I
Mm,
think that was the sentiment in this idea of the person sitting next to you is this unique, distinct collection of all these different people who have impacted them. And that's what your comments remind me of, is your parenting is informed by that of your parents, which was informed by their grandparents, as well as your in-laws and a whole network of people. And there's a beauty in that when we stop to think uh, about all of the care and love and nurture that went into supporting us and helping us. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's
mm,
inspiring. And I think that some of the things that I'll share coming up here will connect with that too. Um, uh, Actually, this very next story
mm.
is part of that. Have I ever talked with you about this before? Does this look familiar?
I think so.
Did I share about this on our podcast?
Um, that that I don't think so. Maybe.
Okay. Well, if I did, to our listeners and viewers, sorry about that, but if I didn't, this is just a story I've told a lot, so
Mm,
it's dear to me.
mm,
So what you have here is a picture of my two daughters, Hannah and Aubrey, and this here is in one of our homes in Pennsylvania, the house that my grandmother lived in, and then after her passing, my parents moved into it. And after my parents went on to be with the Lord, we would still go back and visit their home because dear friends of theirs ended up purchasing the
mm,
properties, both of them together,
mm,
and they would invite us to come and visit. And we loved that because we could reminisce
mm,
and think about our times there and walk through the woods. But one of the huge things about a place is that it's just not the same when your loved ones aren't there. And it can be really nice to reminisce, but it's also bittersweet because
mm,
when you go back, there's a sadness about it.
mm,
Well, in one of our visits, when we came, there were these baskets waiting for us from the friends of my mom. The person who organized this was Janie Williams, and her husband is Dave, and that's the couple that bought these homes. They've since needed to sell them, which I totally understand. It's part of the journey of owning multiple properties. But for quite a few years there, I think it's 6 or 7, something like that, we were able to visit. But anyway, when we came, these were waiting for our kids. And it was so touching because we weren't expecting it. And it is so similar in the same exact spirit to what my mom would do when our kids would go. She would make them baskets, and they had all types of toys and candies and items, games, things for them to do, maybe in the car ride back. And they would be waiting um, for the kids when they had arrived. And I didn't really know that Janie would be aware of that, or
mm,
I don't know quite know all the ins and outs of how the idea came together. But when we came in, it was exactly like an expression of care and love, like my mom would do. The kids were so excited, and it really touched me and Katie, and we just felt very moved. And it's been one of those main examples that I keep going back to of surprise and of generosity and of support that really nurtures in a time of need. Like, we were mourning still, at least
mm,
I was. Um,
mm,
and going back home was part of that process. And to go back and have in in a very powerful way this act of generosity in the spirit of my mom coming from her dear friend, it was as if God was like bringing
mm.
healing in that moment, saying, um, "Your mom may not be here now, um, but you are still being cared for, and her dear friends care for you, and this is all something that would bring her great joy, just as it brings you joy." And so I wanted to share this is one of those examples I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, it strikes me that in a way this kind of covers kind of both aspects of the theme, because seeing this has such a big impact, and it just has such it's just so amazing in every way, and it just leaves such a wonderful memory, and it has just overflows with how the impact that it has. And on the other hand, it's one of those tiny things that this friend of your mom's was observant and knew that this is something that your mom did from occasion and on time to time. And yeah, she picked up on that. She thought, I'll just do that. And of course, she knew that you guys would probably appreciate it, but it was just one of those tiny things that was also such a big, great thing. It's just so wonderful. And I just, I can imagine how it must have felt, but I can't even imagine how it really must have felt. It must have just been such a big, amazing thing for everyone there.
Yes, it really was. And sometimes in life, the timing of something is so um, perfect and needed that it just reaches you at a point of vulnerability, and that kind of like the comment you shared earlier about the student affirming her
Mm,
smile, like it's just what you needed at that time. And it's a time to pause and just be grateful and give thanks to God, give thanks to the people around you that you received that then. And it was one of those times where it felt that
mm.
way. um, yes. um, Now, would is there a story that you would like to share, or should I share another one? What do you prefer?
Oh yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Okay,
Um,
great.
yeah.
All right, perfect. Let me go back to this next one then. This is something that involves you and your
Yeah,
generosity,
I know.
Barney. And I think I've told you this on many occasions, but probably I haven't had as many opportunities to say it to our podcast audience. But um, this picture is of a very special meal during my visit on sabbatical to Japan when you and your family took me out for sushi.
Mhm.
And I cannot say how much it meant to me that when I was in Japan, you were such a generous host to me, having me in your home, treating me to meals, guiding me throughout the city and various places to help me see interesting things and connect with people. Without you, my experience of Japan would have been so limited, and it would have been like a little shell, a little tiny itty bitty, like diminished miniature version that couldn't even compare to what it was, because with that um, support that you gave me in your hospitality, I just felt at home. I felt comfortable, and I could really enjoy my time there in a deeper way. So um, a lot of my highlights came in these times when I was with you or with your family, and I just felt connected. And you all were so warm, and you were also helping me experience new things, and you were there to explain how they worked, and how I could understand it. And I just thought it was so neat at this restaurant how, if I remember correctly, that the different colored plates were partly could help you keep track of the cost of the different dishes. Is that
Uh-huh,
right? And
uh-huh. Yeah,
so
that's right.
you
Yep.
can very tangibly stack piles, and like just from the color of the plates, know approximately what your bill is going to be. I thought that was so
I know.
clever. And then just how there's this you know um, variety of items coming down that you can just take off of the I don't know, what would you call that? A belt or a
Yeah, yeah,
moving
like a
mechanism,
conveyor
a
belt. Yeah.
conveyor belt,
Mm-hmm.
and you just
Mm-hmm.
pick the dish that looks good to you. And there was plenty coming around, and it was just a great way to enjoy sushi. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know. I cannot say enough and thank you enough for what you did at supporting me and hosting me during that time in
Mm-hmm.
Japan. So thank you again.
Mm-hmm.
That
Oh
was a
yeah.
real highlight for me, and it was such a like a blessing to be on sabbatical and to experience that. It was like it really expanded my view of the world and
Mm-hmm.
helped me have like a really unique time of apart from my family to experience new things. But then I could come back, and um, when I came back, I could share the joy with them of what that was like. and give them
Oh
some gifts
yeah.
that I was able to collect. And in this picture too, some of the gifts even were passed on through our sister church. These fans
Yeah.
that everyone are holding up um, are from our sister church. And then you can see on the table, I don't know if you can see towards the front in the lower
Uh-huh.
left corner there, those are the cookies from that special dairy
Oh yeah.
place that you told me about. And so we went there, and you know, people love that food, and
Oh
just
yeah.
a lot of special items that I picked up that enabled my family then to kind of taste and in a
Mhm.
sense and see how neat that time was in Japan. So
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
But I'm going to go back for a second. Do you remember this night when we had sushi?
Yeah, really, yeah. Yeah, it's hard to imagine that it was that long ago as I see how little Yuma was.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Just a little guy. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
But he was so sweet. Like you can see his smile there, and he was just
Yeah.
a real good sport to, and also be part of the welcoming.
Mhm.
Invite me in with your family, and
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember he always wanted to go whenever we were, even if we were just picking you up or dropping you off, he really wanted to go along. If it was, even if I said, no, I can do it. And he just really wanted to go. And yeah.
uh, yeah. Um, would you like to bounce your way for a
Mm-hmm.
story, or do you want to
Mm-hmm.
see another one from me?
Yeah, actually, if you can you flip back to the picture of your family.
Yes.
So if if you notice the framed uh, character, Chinese character that you have there
Yes. Yes.
is it's actually it's perfect for today. It's for it could be pronounced as you or longer as Yasashi, and it is really for kindness.
Mm,
Is what it represents.
mm.
And I didn't know that you had picked that up, and it
Yes.
is such a nice thing to have, and then it fits perfectly for today's theme.
It that
And
came from Hiroshima. Um, when
oh,
I was walking around, there was an art shop that caught
mm,
my attention when I went in. There were two framed messages, and I asked the shop owner, "Would you be willing to
mhm,
translate these for me?" When he
mm,
translated that one, at the
mhm.
time that captured my imagination. I'm like, "Oh,
Oh yeah,
that's a really good one." And then I think there was another one that if you see towards the
oh,
front
it's
of the table to the
probably
right, it's just not
facing,
facing us. But
yeah,
I think
Aubrey.
I think that one is actually gratitude. So I wish I that one were turned, um because that would also fit perfectly. But
Oh,
anyway, but
very
we
good.
know it's there even if we can't see the
Mm-hmm.
front of it. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It it makes me think how, we've talked about travel in a number of different ways. But maybe we haven't talked about on this podcast. Maybe we haven't talked enough about how um, it really is a gift that goes both ways. For in the physical things of usually when we visit each other, you bring something to the person that you're meeting, or they give you something, or both, and and yeah, in the intangible ways through the experiences, and like you say, how maybe we give ourselves gifts by either pushing ourselves to try new things or allowing ourselves to be encouraged to try new things and have new experiences, that might seem, especially when we're going halfway around the world, that might seem
Hmm.
a little bit daunting, or
Yes.
um, yeah, or might make us pause a bit. But these experiences and the people that we meet and things that we share together, really, boy, that's one thing that I'm always so thankful for when it comes to travel and hosting people, and getting to meet other people as I travel as well.
That's a really good point. And I think the idea of being stretched and trying something new, there's this um, like a neuroplasticity that I think we have as human beings, that when we do something like that, it can give us a fresh take on a
Mm,
lot of other things. Like I know they say, even if you just try brushing your teeth with the other hand that you don't typically use, or doing
mm,
something out of the ordinary that's small, that can even start to kind of refl- refresh your kind of neurological patterns a little bit, to see
mhm,
things a little
mhm,
bit differently. But to go on a trip or experience a new culture or
mm,
have a different type of experience, like, can really benefit you and recharge you. And so
mhm,
I was just so grateful in this example of how, when I was being stretched and trying new things, I had like a tether, or I had a, a
mm,
guide like in you, that I could say, okay, um, I'm traveling here today. I could,
mhm,
get online, and I could text you, or I could
mhm.
give you a call and say, now, how do you recommend I transfer on the train, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what does this mean? Or and then you would often look out for me and say, oh, no, I see the bus is arriving at this time. And when I did the trip to Hiroshima, like, you
Uh-huh,
were a
uh-huh.
huge help in that regard. So
Mhm,
it was stretching, but it was also nice to have support. And that's great when
mhm,
you can
mhm.
have that. um,
Yeah.
yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I really
Mhm.
appreciate it. And I wanted to give another example, unless if you had something
No,
that
no,
you,
yeah, I'd like to hear more of yours. Yeah.
and I might be able, just for a second, to minimize our screens here, because this picture, I think our um, side, what's it called, our, how, how it displays our little
Yeah.
screens to the side, we're
Mhm.
blocking Micah's face, so I just
Oh no.
minimized for a
Yeah.
second.
Mhm,
But this here is something that surprised me, that was an incredible gift and a blessing during the intense period of the pandemic, when really, for all intents and purposes, we were all relegated to our homes, and really had um, very little we could do outside of that. And so in this season, the kids and I and Katie were talking, and we're like, what is something that we could do together that could be fun and
mm,
light, and something that could also be shared with other people. And at the time, and I guess this is still the case, I'm
mm,
just a very big retro gaming enthusiast.
mm,
And even modern games. I just really
mhm.
enjoy them as part of my free time. And our listeners, viewers know this because we talk about it a lot. But I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to do a series about gaming with family? Like,
Mhm,
what do Micah, Aubrey, and Hannah, and some episodes, Katie, think of
mhm.
some of these old games that I had loved when I was growing up, and that have some of them that are known to be classics, like um, Mario Brothers, or Sonic, or Tetris, or
Mhm.
Pac-Man. Um, and so we thought, why don't we do a series of videos where I'll invite each of the kids to share something that they're excited about in their life. It could be a collectible or a
Oh yeah.
story. And then afterwards, we could play a retro video game and get their retro reaction. Like, what did you think? What was it like? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And so we started recording these, and we would do them once a week. And people were just so kind in the comments, and they thoughtful, and they just, people were really willing to just give us a shout out and say, oh, thank you guys for sharing, we're glad you're doing it, it's nice for us. And we enjoyed recording them. And in some cases, the comments we'd get would be from family members we hadn't heard from in a while, or friends we hadn't heard
Mm.
from in a while. And so it was nice for the kids to hear from them, and we just had a lot of fun doing it. And so this is one of those examples I'm very grateful for, that of the gift of family, as you said earlier, and the gift of
Mhm.
children during a stressful time in life, was an immense blessing, when we could draw together and do some fun things that we enjoyed. So, yeah, that's one that I wanted to share.
Yeah, and I always liked being able to watch those episodes too. It helped me to kind of remember those games, and it was neat to get a glimpse of how things were with your family, and how people in other parts of the world were dealing with the pandemic too. And it, like you said, it was so fun that everyone had the chance at first to share something, to do a little show and tell before kind of getting into um, the gaming portion. of the videos of each episode, and that it was always a lot of fun to be able to see those and um, hear how those kind of games that we grew up with, how they impacted and people who are used to much different types of games these days too.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Barney.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, During the pandemic, I think our conference, Ohio Mennonite Conference, had the sense that pastors were just like local congregations under a lot of strain because in many cases they were preaching to empty rooms and live streaming the message to their congregation members. Anyway, long story short, it was very challenging, as we all know, because one
Mm-hmm.
of the core roles of a pastor or a person in ministry is connecting people. And when people
Mm-hmm.
can't gather, it's very hard to connect them. And that takes a toll. And not only that, there was a lot of anxiety around how to respond. Some preferred a little bit more cautious response. Some
Mm-hmm.
wanted more of a quicker to reassemble response. And
Mm-hmm.
at our church, felt we need to err on the side of caution because a number of our members had health concerns or could be immunocompromised, or there was an
Mm-hmm.
extra risk in assembling as a
Mm-hmm.
community, and we wanted to be careful. So there's just a lot of strain in navigating that. So our conference developed these wellness grants that a
Oh.
pastor could apply for, or licensed ministering person,
Mm-hmm.
and the conference would pay for them to get a little getaway experience, just them
Mm-hmm.
or them and their spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what Katie and I did. We
Mm.
rented an Airbnb in Columbus, Ohio, and we got away for a night and we had delicious food. And in this case, you can see we had delicious ice cream
Yeah.
and just had time to connect. And then the next day, coming home from that trip, we were picking up a new cat. And so we double dipped and we did this fun excursion. And then we got our cat who we really love. His name's Bam Bam. So it was a very special weekend. But this was not something I was expecting our conference to do, but
Mm-hmm.
it was one of those things that really blessed me. When this time came, we really needed it. We really needed it because
Mm-hmm.
we were coming out of the pandemic and we just had not had any time really to ourselves away, just the two of us. And the fact that the conference said, we will cover that cost for
Yeah.
you, um, really made it possible. Otherwise, we wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is um, a huge example of a surprise that I'm grateful for.
Oh yeah. And it looks like such a fun place. I couldn't guess exactly where this was, and then to hear how you were able to put something really special together that wasn't too far away, that was um, right in the right um, you know, like you're saying, um, being sure to stay safe when you're not sure if everything's happening, but then just what you needed to get away, and then still know that you're close enough that everyone back home is going to be fine too, and of course, having something sweet like that really would be so nice to help boost your mood as well. Not to mention a new cat, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's having those little small things that your workplace does for you, or conference whatnot, that really develops, it's watching out for the whole person. That's really it's in some setting it's too rare, and it really is something to really be thankful for.
definitely. Are there times when you and Ayako have been able to do something just the two of you that you found were really refreshing?
Yeah, not not as much lately in the past 6 years or so, but yeah, we before having kids, then yeah, we would really look out for each other in these ways, and schedule these little surprise things to to maybe go revisit places that we had enjoyed in the past, or try something new really unexpectedly, and look out for each other in that way. And yeah, that boy, that is really something to be thankful for. And I think that, when our kids are bigger, and maybe we can um think about making it easier to have little getaways too. I think we'll be able to look at things in a new perspective and see how
Definitely.
much joy that we can have from those again.
I think that's really true that there are seasons in life where it's harder to get away and seasons where it's easier. And when your kids are young and small and there's that extra level of need,
Mm-hmm.
it is harder. So I get exactly what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's really neat to think about how close Aiko's parents are and how there are times when that extra support, when your kids can go over to visit with them, can be a blessing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's um, it's not quite the same probably as a getaway weekend,
Right.
but having a support network nearby
Mm-hmm.
is, oh, that's probably a huge extra boost to the
Mm-hmm.
the um, parental energy reserves. I'm thinking, I don't know, but
Yes.
do
Oh
you think
yeah.
that that
So true.
helps?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah. It really does. Yeah.
yeah.
I know.
I'm sure
I know.
if your parents, if it were humanly possible for your parents to help out with that, they would in a
Oh, I
heartbeat.
know. Oh yeah. I know.
Also,
Yeah.
but they savor the visits when
Mm-hmm.
you're in
Mm-hmm.
Ohio. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and when they come
Mm-hmm.
to you, I guess too, they've been to you.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, they did make it really possible when we did our podcast together over the
Oh,
summer. And
wow.
yeah, and when I got home, I wasn't sure how things would go because sometimes Yuma really prefers to have me around, but to go home and hear the report of they froze corn, and he was such a big help picking it and getting it ready, and he had such a great time, and it was so neat to hear that. And it was an experience that I always enjoyed when I was little, and so I was glad he had the chance to do that too.
Oh, that's very special. Well, thank
Mm-hmm.
you. I'll also say thank you to Ron and Liz because it was so fun recording that
Yeah, oh
podcast. But
yeah.
then what our audience might not know is
I
after
know.
that, we went down into my basement and played NES games for
Oh yeah,
quite
that
some
was
time.
awesome.
It
Oh,
was
that was so
amazing.
great. Yeah, oh
Retro
yeah.
gaming session. So,
I know.
yeah, yeah, that was a huge treat. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very
Mm-hmm.
grateful.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, if I may, then I have another thing to share.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my final picture.
Oh wow.
And this is a special Pokemon Lucario V-Star collector set.
Whoa.
And this was a very big surprise and a huge blessing to Hannah. She has really gotten into collecting Pokemon cards, and there's a local store called Operation Fandom in Worcester. And for a while, we were going every Friday, and she would save up her money during the week, and she would select the card she wanted. They have
Mm-hmm.
a number of bins where you can get
Mm-hmm.
discount cards. And so she started there building her collection. And then she started getting some of the more expensive cards that
Mm-hmm.
she really would save up for. But she saw this set and she said, "Oh, Dad, that looks amazing." I said, "Oh, it really does, Hannah, but I'm sorry we don't have enough money for that today, but we could
Mm-hmm.
save up for it." And
Mm-hmm.
she was like, "Okay." And, you could tell she was doing the mental math and thinking how
Yeah,
long
yeah.
she'd need to save.
Mm.
Well, unbeknownst to us, there was a really generous couple paying attention, standing right next to us, just watching Hannah and
Wow.
and me talk about this. And so we're kind of still looking through cards, moving on from the conversation, and then
Mm.
um, off out of the corner of my eye, I see somebody walking towards us, and and then they hold up this collector set, and they said, your daughter reminds us of of how we were when we were collecting Pokemon cards.
Oh.
Both the husband and the wife in this family collected Pokemon cards when they were young,
Whoa.
and their son collects Pokemon cards. And they said when we
Oh
heard
wow.
her talk about this set, we could tell how much she was she wanted it and was interested in it, and we just want to bless you. And we bought this for her.
Oh,
And I said, Hannah, isn't that amazing? They bought you the collector set. And she said, really? Thank you. Thank you so much. And she was so delighted. And so we came home and I took this picture and got it developed and then, or I should say printed.
mhm.
And then I wrote a card to them because I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
have their contact information.
Oh
So
no.
I went back to the store and the person who did the transaction that day, it was a very unique um, a thing to have happen. So he could remember the details.
Oh yeah.
And I said, can I leave this card with
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you can give it to them? And I wrote in the card to the couple, I said, if you would be interested at all in connecting anymore or talking anymore, here's my contact information. And they reached out to me and we went
Oh
back and
wow.
forth a little bit by text, and as I told them about how she enjoyed, the cards in the set
Mm,
and
mm,
thanking them. And they were very sweet people. So that is my final slide. Just when even a stranger or somebody that you don't know does something that's so generous
mm,
or helps you out or is notices you
mhm,
or is aware of your situation or that of your child and then they act um, how grateful
mm,
that can make us, how much it can mean, how inspiring it can be, that random act of generosity. It inspires me. Hopefully someday I can do something like that for someone
mhm.
else, to pass it on, so to speak, or to also bless someone else as we were so deeply blessed. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
so that's my final example. Is there anything else that you'd like to share from your experience before we close our time?
No, that last one is so hard to top. Um, or to even try to meet kindness, the unexpected thoughtfulness and kindness and generosity of strangers is just so wonderful. Your story reminded me of when I was at Cedar Point as a very small child and getting off of the mine ride, and I didn't like it so much. And some young adult, some guy who was probably high school or college, came up to me with his girlfriend. I still remember it very clearly, and he gave me um, a penguin, a stuffed penguin, and
Oh,
to help me feel better. And it did the trick. It really helped me feel better right away. And now I really do like the mine ride and other roller coasters. But it's just those things where people around us are observing and observant and step right in at just the right moment. And yeah, I think that it's um, more people than what we know, and maybe some people are just hesitant and maybe decide maybe to stay on the sidelines at the time being. But I think that everyone I think has this impulse in them, and yeah, I think really acting on it is just such a blessing to when you do the acting and to the people that receive as well.
yes. Oh, I agree. Thank you, Barney. And
Mm-hmm.
we are very grateful for you, our viewers and listeners, that you uh, take time to join us as we share. And anytime, if you would ever want to pose a question or reach out to us with ideas or topics, we welcome those. And we hope that in the coming weeks, as the celebration of Thanksgiving happens here in the US, or even examples to be grateful for in Japan or other parts of the world, as those occur, that you and can feel blessed and feel encouraged and inspired by them, that may they be plentiful in your lives and may they continue also to open up doors to share that joy with others. So thank you for listening, and until next time, goodbye.